Dude, what the freak do you want to talk about today?
Welcome back to the Second Floor Experience, everyone, where we don't know what we're going to talk about, but it always works out.
Always.
Let me just get this first part off my chest, and then we can just go with the flow.
Free ball.
I am discovering through personal experience and the experience of those around me that in many facets of our culture, I think a huge problem that no one is talking about is the lack of accountability among generations to support one another. Like, there has been an inherent selfishness with both the younger generation towards the older and the older towards the younger, in a sense where I get this feeling across social media. I get this feeling like when I talk to my friends. I get this feeling myself. I get this feeling when I talk to older people, when I talk to younger people. And it's this feeling of like, no one wants to get over themselves to do their generational duty. And what I mean by that is like the younger generation, like Gen Z, Millennials, are struggling so much with their circumstances that the easiest thing to do is just blame and complain. So they fall, most of them fall victim to a victimhood mentality, right? We've talked about that before. And then on the flip side, it's like the older generation, instead of being like, you know what, how could I help, you know, the younger generation in my circle of influence to get up and to make it in the world? They just they just prefer to like generalize and bash and say like, well, every young person is lazy and every young person has it easy, right? And it's like, it's just this revolving circle of pointing fingers. And I think it's contributed to the state of our country more than most people are talking about. And I mean, as a young person, America specifically the West does a terrible job of making a young person feel like they're an adult at any certain time. It's like when you turn 16, okay, you can drive, but you're not 18 yet. You turn 18, okay, yeah, you're seen as an adult. Gillette will send you a freaking razor in the mail. Happy birthday. And like you can vote, can you vote at 18? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
you can vote at 18. Yeah. But you can't drink yet. And then it's like, you got to wait till you're 21. And it's like, okay, I'm 21. Oh, now I must be seen as a man, or now I must be seen as a woman and not just a girl or not just a boy. And it's like, oh no, don't you know your frontal lobe's not fully developed till you're 25? By the way, you also can't rent a car till you're 25.
Yeah.
Oh, also you can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 25. And then you turn 25 and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. But you're not really an adult till you get to 30. And it's like, or if you want to go by like achievements, then it's like, oh, well, you're not really adult till you get married. Mm-hmm. Then you get married, it's like, oh, well, you're not really an adult till you're paying your own bills, and you pay your own bills, right? Or vice versa. It's like, oh, you're not really an adult until you have kids. You have kids, and like, oh, you're not really an adult till you have a mortgage and kids and a dog and a wife. You know, oh, well, you know, and it's just like, well, it's like when, right? And
yeah,
it may sound like a mute, like silly point, but there's a reason that Native Americans were so serious about sending their young boys out and saying, you cannot come back to this tribe until you complete X, Y, and Z. Like, you kill this animal, whatever. You know, you do this certain tribute. And the point of that was they had to prove their value to society, to that society and that culture. And when they did that, they returned, and every single person in the village considered them a man.
That's very true.
Right? And we don't have anything like that in our culture. And so what it does is it just it gives no incentive for young people who are struggling to get a grip on adulthood. And then, God forbid, they're freaking, you know, empowered by someone around them, or not empowered, but like codependent on someone around them, and someone around them like feeds into this victimhood mentality. They're basically screwed. I mean, how do you get out of that until you have a major life decision to make, basically? So this whole like rant I'm on is basically trying to say, like, I think that it's both generations or it's like the older and the younger's responsibility to work together to do this. And I'm personally just frustrated at some older people that just continue to like punch down on what I feel like is a generation that is experiencing some of the most ambiguous things that we've ever had as a country. It's like, okay, if we're going to war, I can understand that, right? Like we're going to war, that's a big deal, right? But it's like, no, we're in this like social media, ambiguous, anxiety-filled, depression-ridden monster that no one seems to realize is actually destroying their brain, right? And like frying their dopamine receptors. And it's like everyone laughs at that and it's like, ha 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 ha, yeah. And then goes back to watching reels. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's just a different battle. Like it's not better or worse or harder or not. Like it's just different. You know, the economy is just different. School is just different. Politics, it's just different. It's just different. And it's like, it's not comparing apples to apples. It's not. It's like apples and oranges. And so one thing that I'm really going to be cognizant of as I get older is not putting down young people and really trying to encourage them. And listen, you know, there's people on both sides, the younger and the older, who are amazing hard workers. They want to get better. And there's a lot of old people that see that and they want to help. Older people want to help, right? Yeah. There's definitely people like that. Yeah, for sure. But I would say like the majority consensus is like there's this infighting that is, I don't know if it's always been like that, at least in the West, I'm not sure, but man, it is just like so frustrating because when you hold someone to a higher standard, and you believe in them, like it can really transform their lives. Yeah. You know, it gives them purpose.
Yeah. What do you think is do you think there's like a root cause to this whole situation? Do you think it is just the fact that we don't have like honestly, I think this is what you do when you become a man kind of thing? Or
I think it's a lot of different things. I think the rise of secularism really hurt that a lot because this idea of like subjectivity of just kind of like, well, you know, we give meaning is ambiguous, right? And I think that has made its way into purpose. And so if you don't have someone who's grounded in some kind of purpose, then I don't think the culture thing would matter. So I think it's kind of both and, right? It's like we need to give people purpose and meaning. And we believe like the best way to do that is through a relationship with Jesus because it gives them an eternal meaning all of a sudden. But if you're not religious or you're not spiritual, you're not a Christian or whatever, like you can still experience purpose in your life. But I think we're kind of burning the candle at both ends, if that makes sense. And it's like, it's difficult because there's not one thing you can point to. Like, it doesn't make sense anymore for us to just be like, okay, you're 18, go out and kill a deer, come back and we'll treat you like a man. Because society is not dependent on like a kill and eat type thing, right? Yeah. But they also can't necessarily go out and get a job and like right then to prove that they can, because you can't support yourself in this economy with a job unless it's like a trade or you get really, really good at sales. It's just a lot harder to do that now. And so you typically have to go to college or you have to go to a trade school. And so it just gets prolonged, right?
Even if you go to college, and when you come out of college, even then you still might not be able to support yourself.
Exactly. And so what do? You go back to college. Either you go back to college because you just don't know what to do and you rack up more debt, or you get into a job that you never really wanted in the first place. And so now you're like, what am I doing all this for? Right? And it's like, only so I can make just barely enough money to scrape by, or like, and then you have boomers who are like selling their house that they bought in 1972 for like $10 and they're making like 100x on their money. Yeah. And it's like, you know, no wonder. Right? Yeah. And then you have like boomers are frustrated because they're hiring a bunch of Gen Z kids who just want to be freaking influencers and they don't want to work hard.
Do you think it's also kind of like a rise of like individualism?
Yes.
Like everyone's trying to kind of like build their ego, build their like own way of success, I
Yes,
guess.
dude. 100%. That's a great
Because
point.
I feel like we're more and more we're losing that communal aspect of life. Like everything is, I mean, dude, forever, like success was kind of based on like when a man was successful, like it wasn't just him, like his whole family,
Extended
for
family.
extended family, like for generations, he was like successful, dude. Like, and even that now is kind of lost. What?
What a great segue into the Old Testament language.
Right, dude. Right. I just thought about that when I was going to go into it.
Yeah, and I mean it's funny you say that because it's like, I mean that is kind of our mission of Second Floor is to bring people of all ages and generations and ways of life together.
Yes, because even like in the family now, it's even still, you're kind of like, you turn 18 and you're kind of expected to move out and make it on your own all of a sudden, right? And there's like I don't know, sometimes it just seems like everything it's just very self-centered.
It is.
It's all based on like, okay, how can I be successful?
Yeah.
And that's like all that matters.
Yes.
Really. So then everything that you do revolves around that, like making connections. It's like, okay, how, like, what can I get from this person that's going to make me look good or make me be successful,
dude?
Right? And it's just, I don't know what, like, maybe you can help me out with this, but like why do you think that takes away from like you, why do you think that hurts I guess
development?
Yeah, like becoming an adult, like that, like why does that take away from each side giving each other the respect that they deserve?
It really is a respect thing. It's like, man, what I wouldn't give to hear someone sit down in front of me who's 30, 40, 50 years old and say, man, I see what your generation's dealing with. Like, you guys are going through it, but like, you know what? I see, even more so, like I see you guys as the generation that's going to like help us navigate this. And like now all of a sudden you're giving that person a purpose of like, this is difficult. And I believe that you have what it takes, but you gotta be strong. Like that's where the encouragement comes in, I think but it's that mutual respect of, and then the younger person, I believe that the older person should set that example. I think that is the responsibility of the older person, is to set the example of that type of respect, or at least like awareness or acknowledgement. And then the young person should follow that, not with a snarky remark, not with it's terrible for us, I can never get ahead. It's like, they should follow with like, and I also see how your generation is struggling with this, like the retirement aspect of boomers, and all these things are happening where it's kind of unprecedented in the older generations too. There's this great transfer of wealth happening, all these things. And now all of a sudden you have a conversation where two people are trying to understand each other versus two people saying, well, this is the reason that your generation, I've had people say that to my face where they're like, dude, your generation just sucks. Like they just don't know anything. And it's like, you're just throwing up a line that you freaking heard on TikTok or the news or something. Like, I don't know. It's just,
well, I think the irony is that the generation before them probably said the same thing about them.
That's exactly what it is.
It's like every generation has had their crisis.
Yes.
Right? Like I can imagine living through World War II.
Yes.
Or like the freaking Civil War, right?
Insane.
Like insane times. But even now it's like every generation goes through something that the previous generation never experienced.
Yes.
Like for us right now, it is this technology age that like no one in the human race has ever, that we know of, has ever like experienced this level of technology.
Yes.
Where I can literally FaceTime someone across the world right now. Like, and like we're all so connected in so many ways. But there's also this whole thing of like screens that just takes over our lives now. Like these things are literally, I mean, Elon Musk talks about like, you know, this whole thing of like being literally connected to our smartphones. Like they talk about, I forget the word they use, but for instance, like Neuralink, right?
Yeah.
He talks about how like we're basically already there. Like the only difference between Neuralink, like putting a chip in your brain and your phone, is that it's inside of you. But like you're already, we already can't live without technology. Like our phones go everywhere with us, right? So the generation before us did not have that like we do now. So each generation has these battles that they have to learn to deal with, but it's not going to help if you're just punching up or punching down.
Yeah.
For both, what, like for
it's
either
not,
side.
It's just not going to solve any problems.
Yeah.
And so I mean, think about the freaking Generation Alpha, like that's coming up behind us, and they're having to deal with having a tablet in their hand from the time they were alive.
Yeah.
Like 0 days old, they're coming out the womb, and then they're watching TV the next day.
Yeah.
Where it's like, for us, I think growing up, obviously we had TV, but we didn't have like smartphones that young, right? Like it was when we were middle school, then things like the iPhone really started to come out.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's different, right? That's different.
Yeah, for sure.
I have this generation of iPad kids that went through COVID during school, you know, and it's like, that's a different thing than what we dealt with.
Yeah, these kids now are gonna have AI.
Yeah.
Like fully integrated within their lives. Like
yes. And in their schoolwork, like it's so easy. Like it's the easiest to cheat there's ever been to cheat in school, you know? So it's like the teachers now have to figure out how are they gonna like make sure kids are actually learning.
Yeah, dude.
But then what's the point of, like, then you get into the education system where what's the point of doing all this if AI is going to take over some
exactly.
of it? So should you be teaching the kids how to use AI?
Yes, right.
But the education system's not going to catch up that fast, obviously. So I mean, that's an age-old thing. But.
Dude. Yeah, and then our generation is going to be the ones 50 years from now saying, "Oh, you guys have AI do everything for you." It's going to be the same thing.
Back in my day, I had to write my own papers
yeah.
on the computer I had to type them out.
They're gonna say, "You wrote papers?"
Oh, you guys had keyboards?
Yeah.
You mean like physical, like you typed with it?
I just think, and it writes it out for me. Yeah. But dude, this is why. Gosh, dude, I know we talked about this a lot, but like, this is why I think the church has such a crazy opportunity to be an example, like in this time, because even in church settings, oftentimes we segregate and like we separate the old from the young. Like so many churches you have like the kids, and then you have the middle school, and then you have high school, and then you have like the adult service. And it's rare that you have like even just one service where the entire like family comes together, right? Unless sometimes you have like an event or whatever, but even oftentimes with those events, there's like activities for kids, and it's just always like tending to each group individually, I guess. But this is something we talked about. I took a class at SAGU. It was like family ministries. I don't remember, but we talked about this a lot. Where there was like different models of church, and how there are some churches who are starting to take on this like family integrated way of service, where like once a month or maybe every other service, they have a service where the entire family comes and like sits in on the service. And I just think that's so huge, because when you have that, when you allow that space, when you give that space, then like, and encourage like the older to talk to the younger to talk to the older, and just learn from each other. That's just so huge, dude. Like we just don't have that very often.
So huge. Yeah, we don't. I mean, there's just, like you said, it's segregated pretty much everywhere we go.
Yeah.
Except for like when even when you're at home sometimes, in a quote unquote normal family, everyone's on their own screen,
Yeah.
or in their own room. And so you have to like actually make time, like make purposeful family time.
Yes. You have to be very intentional.
Yeah. Family dinner or like a game night or something. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting to the point where you have to really, really fight for that in your family, or else you feel like you have your own family as strangers in your own home.
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah, I was talking to Sam this morning, as a friend of ours, and he was telling me how he was like, dude, I'm done with media pretty much, and I was like, what do you mean, like social media?
It's a
And
classic Sam line.
yeah. He was like, I was like social media? He's like, no, just like media in general. He was like movies or whatever. He wasn't saying that he was like done with it, but he was saying is that he's tired of the, like, we get together on Friday nights, right, for our hangouts.
Yeah.
And like the default is a movie. And I was like, dude, like I'm with you on that, bro. Like,
Yeah, me too.
but we were just talking about how the like Friday nights have been so just vital for like our friendships, like our little tiny community that we have, right? Like
vital.
Me, you, Sam, Gavin, Nathan, Benji, like all those guys, like having that time to just sit down and have a meal, dude, at the end of the week. It's so like, because there have been periods of time where we'll go like a month or two without doing that. And it affects me.
Me too.
And you can see how it affects our friend group where, I don't know, like it just doesn't, things just feel off. Like sometimes I feel more frustrated throughout the day, like just certain things. But
same.
But we're just talking about how important it is to guard that time and be intentional with that time of just sitting down and having a meal together and talking about, maybe let's just not like default to just sitting around and watching a movie, but like just either just being like present with one another or like going and doing something,
Yes, bro.
So it's just so important nowadays to, whether it's with your friends or your family or like your church community or whatever it is, to be intentional like about those times, like when you're with people, to like really engage and not allow screens or whatever to or maybe even generational barriers to like divide us. Just like be like, dude, I'm gonna be present with this dude, like whether he's 55 years old or whatever, like just be present around people, dude.
Gosh, such simple wisdom, but not easy.
It's not easy. It's becoming more and more difficult, it seems like.
It is. Maybe tomorrow night something will shift in the atmosphere.
And then again, that's the whole goal of Second Floor, dude. It's to provide a space for that kind of community. That's what I look forward to, bro. Like having a coffee shop and walking in and not just being able to sit down with someone our age, but dude, it'd be so sick to sit across the table from someone who's like 60, 70 years old,
dude,
and like fought in a war or just whatever, and just be able to talk to them and learn from them. Dude, last Christmas, we had the chance to go over to my grandparents' house on my mom's side, and we didn't plan on going over there for very long, but we were all just like sitting around the dinner table, and they just busted out the photos, bro, like the old photos, and dude, we sat there for hours talking about, like, they were just telling us, my grandparents were showing us all these pictures of my like my mom and dad, like when they were younger, and my mom when she was like super young.
What?
Yeah, dude. And my papa,
Yeah.
he was in the Navy,
Uh-huh.
so he was like, you know, telling us all kinds of stories about that, and then both my mama and my papa worked for NASA
Whoa.
in Florida. Yeah, and like they were there. They were telling us about the day that like the Challenger exploded in Florida. You know, the rocket.
Wow.
And dude, I just remember walking away, dude, we stayed there till like midnight. You know, at my grandparents' house. Like they're freaking. My papa was like 80 years old, and like they never stayed up that late. But I just walked away feeling so like blessed.
Yes.
By that experience, dude, because I got to hear
so true
these stories like from. Not only that, it's like my lineage. It's like it's just cool to like know those things, and you feel a greater sense of connection to like your family. And gosh, it was just so cool, dude. It was so cool.
It's so funny too because like you'll go on for like 3 hours and just feel it's like some of the greatest stories and most hilarious times. And it's like such a high. You feel like such a high afterwards. Dude. And what's so funny is like you get some of the older people will say things like, well, we just didn't think it was like that big of a deal, like to tell you guys about this.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you mean that you don't think this is a big deal? Like, I love hearing these stories.
Yeah, dude.
But once you just got to get them started. Like, once you get them started on something, they'll go on a tear.
I know.
Yeah, I've had really similar experiences. I feel the exact same way too, because it's you really are unlocking bits of history.
Yes.
And I mean, for thousands of years, that's how history was preserved, was oral tradition.
Yes, dude.
And so you're like literally tapping into your DNA in a sense.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So true. It's very just like soul filling. Like it just I don't know. Something about it.
It is. It's soul filling.
Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it. It fills your soul. Versus when you get off social media, you feel like you just ate a bunch of junk food for your soul.
You feel like a dead person, like walking. Like you feel like a zombie, dude.
Well, what?
No, I mean, I was just I'm just saying, like, it's just crazy how, like, that. It's crazy how it just always leads back to, like, that's. It's interesting, like, because that's how, like, that's what God created us for, is like community, right? So it's amazing how, like, it makes sense why it does feed the soul, you know, because that's how we were designed.
I was gonna say, speaking of family lineage, you want to tell them about what you said before we started about the family tree?
Genesis?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I will try. So let me just start with this. Like recently, over the last like 5 or 6. Let me go back further. Over the last couple of years, I don't know why, but the story of Jacob and Esau has always been like very intriguing to me. I don't know why, it just was. And on top of that, like the book of Genesis, like it's just so interesting. There's so many just odd things in it and things about the past. And like I love ancient history, right? Like I love conspiracies. Yeah. And Genesis is full of those. So
dude,
it's always piqued my interest. So like finally over the last month or so, I've just been like doing a deep dive on Genesis and just going through all the lineages, like the genealogies, and just trying to have a real deep understanding of like the purpose of Genesis, like the just like the layout of it all. Like I don't know why I love when I can just like fully, I don't know, like in my head, almost see like a timeline.
You're really good
of
at that. Yeah.
The book, right? Yeah. And like just like, okay, like this happened and this happened and this happened, and I can like go down the line, right? Because then it like paints the whole picture. And then you can see like, oh, okay, so this connected to that. This happened because of this, right? That's why I think like when you're reading the Bible, like just simply knowing timeline, like dates, like years or whatever, just even if it's just like a rough idea, and then knowing like the geography, like the map, like where they were. Those two things, just for whatever reason, it just helps, especially if you're like a visual person, like like a visual learner, which I definitely am. Like it helps you understand like the whole thing, you know. So with that, I've been going through with the genealogies, right? And starting with Adam, going all the way down, it ends with Joseph, right? In Genesis. And gosh, dude, there are so many interesting connections. And I'm trying to be really careful not to read into it like too much.
Yeah.
I don't want to become like a Bible code kind of person, you know, where like there's meaning in everything, like in every sentence. But when you read through the narrative especially from even from Adam down to Joseph, like there's just so many parallels that one, like it's hard not to notice them, and then it's hard for me not to at least ask the question of like, okay, what is the purpose of these parallels, right? And one thing I'll say is like, there are a lot of people who will say that Genesis, some people believe that the entirety of the book is symbolic, right? There are people who will argue that.
Right.
And I've always kind of been, I feel like mainstream Christianity would probably deter from that idea. Like most times people will agree that like will believe that everything actually happened, right? And I've always been that way. I've always believed that, but there are like I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but there are some things when you read it, it's like, dang, okay, you can kind of see why people would believe that. Like you can kind of see why people would think everything is symbolic, right? But then one of the biggest evidences of it not being symbolic is the genealogies. Like are the genealogies, right? Because back then when ancient texts were written like that, if you take something like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Book of Enoch or any of those, like Beowulf, all those like super old stories, the writers wouldn't put in genealogies because they're boring. Like a good story,
they are boring.
Like no one wants to read through that, right? So just the fact that the genealogies are in there sets it apart from
I forgot about that.
From all these other like stories, right? So but okay, so what I like here for me, dude, I feel like it's not impossible to me. Like, what if it seems fully possible to me, right? That the story could be true and also symbolic. I feel like this, just like if you take the Exodus, right, and you take the Passover, right? So, the last plague, like the last punishment that God set on Egypt, like on Pharaoh, right, was the angel of death.
Yes.
And so to protect the Hebrews, they had they put they took the blood and put it on the door frames, right?
Right.
And that's why, and so when the angel came and saw the blood on the door frames, it passed over them, right? So you had the Passover. That actually happened. And so then centuries, thousands of years later, you have Jesus.
Yes.
And right before his death, he has he has the communion. Like I'm pretty sure it's like during the Passover.
Yeah.
Like and that was symbolic. Like that was symbolic for Jesus being the blood of the Lamb, right? Like he's the Lamb, and his blood
covers us So that
we're
the penalty
saved
of
from the
death.
judgment of right. So
Wow.
I think these things can be both and. I think they can be things that happened and also are symbolic, right?
Wow, I love that.
Okay. So all that's out of the way. There's just I haven't gotten far enough in all this to have like a definitive conclusion or argument or thesis, right? But there's just weird parallels. Like for instance, you have Adam, right? Adam and Eve. They have Cain and Abel, and Cain. It says that Cain was like he worked off the land, and like he cultivated the land, and then you have Abel who like was a shepherd, and so that like just the fact that Cain worked off the land, that is a parallel you see through the lineage. Like you see that with Ishmael, like Ishmael, right? Okay, so after Adam and Eve, you go down the line. Eventually, through generations, you get to Abraham, right? Who has Isaac and Ishmael.
Okay.
And so Ishmael, who like Cain was kind of like exiled from the family, in a sense, he like lives off the land. Like he becomes like a wild man, and he becomes like a skilled hunter, an archer, all these things, right? Whereas Isaac was not really that way.
Wow.
But then Isaac has Esau and Jacob, and Esau differs from Jacob in that he also becomes a skilled archer and like a huntsman.
Yeah.
Right? And he is exiled from the family almost.
Whoa.
And not only that, he goes and marries two Ishmaelites. So just like that's just one parallel, dude. That's just one of like this weird thing of you have one side, like one son or one of the sons becomes like this hunter, this like person who lives off the land, and then the other side is more like docile and more, it says like Jacob was more civilized and he lived in tents, like he stayed in the tents, right? And so what is that? Like what's that parallel, you know?
Yeah.
Another one is the like the women being unable to have children, right? Like you have Sarah, who was unable to have a child until way late in her like age, right?
Yeah.
And then also, like for whatever reason, Rebecca doesn't have that problem. But then you have when Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. Okay. Jacob, the woman that he like truly loves, Rachel, is unable to bear children like forever, just like Sarah was. And I don't know like what all these parallels mean, but like I know that they're there. Yeah, I know that they're there. And there are more that haven't come to mind yet. Okay, but yes, but what I was telling you before we started the podcast was there okay, you remember how you were talking about the kings? We did this a couple episodes ago, right? And you're talking about Hezekiah, Jehoshaphat, and Josiah, right? And was it Ahaz, the king before him, that you said, it was like you can literally look at their lineage and how God said, because you did this thing, I will allow like 4 of your generations to rule, right?
It was Jehu who killed King Ahab and won that blessing.
Okay.
Jehu.
Yeah. And so then it says how like
4 generations.
4 generations later you can read like that last generation, the dude is like assassinated, right, in a conspiracy. And it says like
this was the fulfillment of the word of the Lord.
Yes. So you kind of see that in a similar way in this lineage, right? Because I was telling you how Noah just gets off the ark after the great flood. All right. This is before Abraham. Noah gets off the ark. He has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? So there's this whole weird story where Noah like falls asleep drunk in his tent, and he's like naked, right? Like he falls asleep naked in his tent. And Ham walks in and sees his father naked, and there's a lot of debate as to like why this, like among scholars, as to why this was wrong. Like for whatever reason, whatever Ham did, it was like shameful.
Yep.
And he goes and like tells his brothers. So Shem and Japheth, they like put a cloth or like a sheet on their shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and they walk into the tent backwards, facing away from their father, and they cover him, right?
Mm-hmm.
To like, I guess, conceal him. And so then Noah wakes up and he finds out what Ham did, and like he's freaking pissed at Ham. And so he's like, you know, how could you do this to me or whatever? And he curses Ham. And basically, okay, so Ham has a son named Canaan, right?
Okay.
And so Noah declares this like generational curse over Ham, saying that, and like it was a curse and also a blessing for his other sons, Shem and Japheth, right? And so he was basically saying that because Ham did this, Canaan will serve, and like in his lineage will serve Shem and his descendants, right?
Yes.
Are you following, right? So
I'm
like,
following
okay,
you.
Canaan, Ham's son,
Yes.
right, will serve Shem's like family in his lineage, right? And like,
yes.
And basically like the land that Canaan's family like just won't produce like for him or whatever. I don't know, about a curse, right? So I was explaining to you how it's interesting how Abraham is from the lineage of Shem. And when God appears to Abraham, he tells him like, I'm sending you to the land of Canaan, and I'm giving you this land.
Fulfilling
Jeez. that like prophetic, that prophecy that Noah gave over his sons.
Wow.
That like Shem's family line is inheriting Canaan's land, or Ham's like land, which is,
that's so crazy, dude.
It's so crazy, dude. And I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, bro, of all this crap.
That's probably so true.
I honestly, I'm surprised all that came out as well as it did.
Yeah, you weave that together really well.
Because that has been just like scrambling through my head for the past like week. And yeah. It's just so fascinating.
That's why they say the Bible's living and breathing, man.
Yeah. So stay tuned, because
you're going to get updates on this.
Yeah, you're going to get updates on the book of Genesis.
I think that's the secret, though, to sustainably reading your Bible, sustainably doing podcasts. Like, just read about stuff that you're interested in and talk about stuff that you're interested in.
Those interests and desires are God-given, I believe.
People want to listen in either sense, they'll listen. If they don't, they don't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm curious if, because you have like this is like, you know, super tangent kind of right now, but I'm curious if you have the three patriarchs, right? Like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Okay.
And then I forget what the phrase is that they use, but later on in Israel's history, you have the three kings, the united monarchy, which is Saul, David, and Solomon. And so,
okay,
I'm curious to see if there's any parallels at all between like the patriarchy, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Saul, David, and Solomon.
Interesting.
And I don't know. There might not be. There probably. I'm gonna assume that there isn't. But that doesn't mean I'm not gonna look.
Absolutely.
And
Leave no
consider it,
stone
yeah.
unturned.
Yeah. But wouldn't that be fascinating, dude?
That'd be
Like, if there
crazy.
is?
Yeah, I've been like on an Old Testament tear recently.
Same, bro. Same. I spent a lot of time in the New Testament over the past couple of years, but
dude, yeah, a lot of your papers were all
yeah,
on the Gospels or on the New Testament in
Yeah.
college. It's true.
Yeah, and then I did like a class on the prophets, so I'm more familiar with them too. But as far as like the Pentateuch, and like Judges, those like earlier Old Testament books, yeah, I haven't really gotten to do a lot of studying in them, so it's been fun.
I like them so much because they're just good stories.
They are, bro.
At the end of the day, it's like it's just reading a great story on like a battle or a king, or it's just like such a cool narrative.
Dude, there are some wild stories in the Old Testament. Wild.
Crazy stuff.
And what's crazy is that like so much of it is being like I feel like this is not talked about enough, but so much of it is being like proven true from archaeology. And that's just something that's not talked about enough, dude.
It's not.
It's really not.
It
like
is not talked about enough.
There's so many archaeological findings that support. Like it's just crazy. Like you read the Bible, and it says like this and this and this happened, and then like all of a sudden you find they find an artifact that like, okay, yeah, like this is what the Bible said happened. And it's like true, you know? Gosh, bro. One of the biggest ones was it was an Assyrian obelisk. Okay, we learned about this when I was in my prophetic class. For years, like forever, scholars and like Bible critics were starting to say that like they were starting to doubt that Hebrews or Israelites ever even actually existed, because there was no evidence of it. Like there was no evidence of King David or like a King Solomon. There's no evidence of a Hebrew nation, right? And all of a sudden, I think it was something like it was definitely in the 1900s, somewhere around there, but all of a sudden archaeologists dug up this obelisk of an Assyrian king. I forget who the king was exactly, but it's an obelisk, and on it it was like a tribute or something to the Assyrian king, and on it had, dude, I want to say his name was King, I want to say it's Jehu, but that probably wasn't it. But it was
one of the Old Testament kings.
One of the Old Testament kings.
Really?
And it was him kneeling down before the Assyrian king.
Whoa.
As if like he was like, you know, lost in the battle, or I can't remember what the purpose was and what the obelisk said.
Dude, I remember fragments of hearing about that.
Yeah. And it was like all of a sudden there's proof that here, like right there, you have an Israelite king, like evidence that, and that's just one, dude. They have evidence of King David now, like, and him existing. I forget all there's literally thousands. There's thousands of evidences that they found, but I'll end on this one.
Okay.
The Cyrus cylinder.
Classic.
You know about the Cyrus cylinder?
Classic.
Dude. Okay, I'm forgetting all the details right now.
You ask our friend ChatGPT.
Yeah. But basically it was a cylinder that they found that had I think it was like Babylonian writings on it that talked about how it was talking about the time that Cyrus basically sent the Jewish people back home to their homeland, right? think that should be right.
Yep, the Cyrus cylinder is an ancient clay artifact that dates back to around 539 BC during the reign of Cyrus the Great of Persia. It is inscribed in Akkadian cuneiform script and is considered one of the earliest declarations of human rights. The text on the cylinder describes Cyrus's conquest of the city of Babylon and his policies afterward, including his restoration of temples and the repatriation of displaced peoples, including the Jews, to their homelands.
Yeah.
The Cyrus cylinder is often celebrated for promoting religious tolerance and fair governance. Some scholars interpret it as a foundational document for the concept of individual freedom and human rights, although its primary purpose was more likely to legitimize Cyrus's rule and demonstrate his benevolent policies. It was discovered in 1879 in the ruins of Babylon.
1879. Holy crap.
I know. It's crazy.
That's crazy though, dude.
Yeah, I remember that being like a huge discovery.
Yeah.
Or hearing about how big of a discovery that was. Man.
Well, I feel like we've gone down quite the rabbit hole.
You just never know when you turn on an episode really where it's gonna go. Well, thanks for listening. Hope you got something out of this. If not, we'll be here next week. So
As always.
let us know what you're thinking. Write us, leave a comment, and
If there's a topic you want us to cover,
you want us to cover,
let us know.
let us know. Let us know. And we will see you next time on Second Floor Experience. Peace.
I want to talk to you.
Not now. Later.
No, now.